Most people grow up hearing the same quiet message about money. Don't talk about it. Don't chase it too hard. And whatever you do, don't look greedy. So millions of young entrepreneurs carry a strange kind of shame. They want freedom. They want success. They want to build something big. But deep down, they feel like wanting wealth makes them selfish. And that belief quietly keeps them stuck. Because the truth is, generational wealth was never built by people who felt guilty about creating it. It was built by people who understood something most of us were never taught. Wealth isn't an accident, it's a system. And once you see how that system actually works, you'll realize why most families stay financially stuck for generations. But that realization is where everything begins. Because the biggest barrier to building generational wealth isn't money, it's mindset. And once that shifts, the entire game changes. If you look at how most people earn money, the pattern is painfully simple. They trade time for income, work a job, get paid, spend the money, repeat, for decades. It happens because of a belief most people never question. And while there's nothing wrong with working hard, this model has a hidden flaw that almost nobody talks about. When income stops, wealth stops. That's why salaries alone almost never create generational wealth. Because real wealth doesn't come from what you earn, it comes from what you own. Wealthy families understand this difference early. Instead of relying entirely on income, they build assets. Assets like businesses, stocks, real estate, intellectual property, things that produce income whether they're working or not, and over time, those assets begin doing something powerful. They multiply. A business grows, investments compound, properties increase in value. Meanwhile, most people are still stuck trading hours for paychecks. But this gap between earners and owners doesn't happen because one group works harder. A belief that quietly limits ambition before it even starts. And once you recognize it, you begin to see why so many entrepreneurs unknowingly hold themselves back. There's an uncomfortable truth many young entrepreneurs feel but rarely admit. They're afraid of becoming too successful. Not because success itself is scary, but because of what people might think. Friends might say they've changed. Family members might accuse them of caring too much about money. Some people even fear being seen as greedy, so they shrink their goals without realizing it. They avoid raising prices. They hesitate to scale their business. They turn down opportunities because they feel like they're already doing well enough. But here's the reality. Wealth doesn't grow from playing small. It grows from thinking long-term. Families that build generational wealth rarely think in terms of years. They think in decades, sometimes even centuries. They build systems that outlive them. They design businesses that continue running long after they're gone. And they make decisions based on legacy rather than short-term comfort. But once that mindset shift happens, another realization appears. Because wealth isn't just about ambition, there's actually a blueprint behind it. And most people were simply never shown what that blueprint looks like. If you study families that have kept wealth for generations, a pattern begins to emerge. Their success rarely comes from one lucky break. Instead, it usually follows a simple but powerful structure. For pillars that quietly support everything. The first pillar is ownership. Wealthy families prioritize owning assets instead of just earning income. Businesses, equity, investments, ownership means participating in growth rather than just getting paid for time. The second pillar is investing. Money isn't just saved, it's deployed. Stocks, index funds, private companies, and real estate become vehicles that grow wealth over time. The third pillar is systems. Successful entrepreneurs don't build businesses that depend entirely on them. They create systems, teams, and processes that allow the company to run even when they're not there. And the fourth pillar is education. Financial knowledge gets passed down through generations. Children learn about investing early. They understand money not as something mysterious, but as a tool. When these four pillars work together, something remarkable happens. Wealth stops being temporary. It becomes self-sustaining. But even with the perfect system, one invisible force makes the biggest difference of all. And it's something young entrepreneurs have more access to than any generation before them. Time. One of the greatest financial advantages a young entrepreneur can have isn't capital, it's time. Because time unlocks one of the most powerful forces in finance: compound growth. At first, compounding looks almost unimpressive. Small investments grow slowly. The progress feels boring. But then something strange happens. Growth begins accelerating. Investments start generating returns, and those returns begin generating returns of their own. Year after year, the effect multiplies. What began as modest savings slowly transforms into something much larger. That's why investors who start early often end up dramatically ahead of those who begin later, even if they invest less money overall. And today, younger generations are recognizing this earlier than ever before. More young people are investing in stocks, launching businesses, and exploring digital assets. They understand something previous generations often discovered too late. The earlier the system begins, the more powerful it becomes. But building wealth alone isn't the final mission. Because the real goal of generational wealth isn't just personal success. It's building something that continues long after you're gone. And for many entrepreneurs, that begins with one powerful idea: turning a business into a legacy machine. Most people start businesses to create income, but wealthy entrepreneurs often start businesses to create assets, and those two goals produce very different outcomes. An income-focused business depends entirely on the owner. If the owner stops working, revenue disappears. But an asset-focused business is built differently. It runs on systems, processes, teams. Customers continue buying even when the founder steps away. That's when a business stops being a job and starts becoming an engine capable of producing income for decades. This is why many wealthy families build family enterprises. One generation starts the business, the next expands it. The third invests the profits into new opportunities. Over time, the business becomes more than just a company. It becomes a financial foundation. But here's the twist many entrepreneurs overlook. Wealth alone isn't enough to guarantee a lasting legacy, because history shows something surprising. Even the largest fortunes can disappear faster than they were built. There's a statistic that quietly circulates in financial circles. It suggests that the majority of family wealth disappears within 3 generations. The first generation builds it, the second maintains it, and the third often loses it. Why? Not because the money suddenly vanishes, but because the knowledge behind it was never passed down. Children inherit wealth without understanding how it was created. They grow up surrounded by resources, but without financial discipline, and slowly, the system that built the wealth begins to break. This is why families who successfully preserve wealth across generations focus on more than money. They teach financial literacy early. They involve younger generations in business decisions. They explain how investments work and why patience matters. In other words, they pass down the mindset along with the assets, because without that mindset, wealth becomes temporary. But when both exist together, something powerful begins to form. A legacy. When most people hear the phrase generational wealth, they imagine enormous bank accounts or luxury lifestyles. But the real meaning runs deeper than that. True generational wealth is about opportunity. It's about creating choices for future generations. The choice to start a business, the choice to pursue education without crushing debt, the choice to build new ideas without the constant pressure of survival. Money becomes a tool that expands possibility. But the most important thing that gets passed down isn't money at all. It's values, discipline, responsibility, vision, because wealth without values can disappear quickly. But wealth combined with purpose can reshape entire family histories. And once young entrepreneurs understand this, something shifts. The shame disappears. For too long, many people have been taught to feel uncomfortable about ambition, to downplay their goals, to pretend they don't care about wealth. But building generational wealth isn't about greed. It's about responsibility. It's about refusing to let the next generation start from zero again. And right now, young entrepreneurs have access to more tools, information, and opportunities than any generation before them. Businesses can be built online. Investments can start with small amounts. Knowledge that once took decades to discover is now available instantly. The only real question is whether someone chooses to use it, because generational wealth doesn't appear overnight. It grows slowly through decisions made today. The businesses you build, the assets you invest in, the knowledge you pass forward, those choices ripple far beyond a single lifetime. And one day, someone in the future may look back and realize something. Their opportunities began with a decision you made today. So the real question isn't whether wealth is possible, it's whether you're willing to build something that outlives you. And if you want to learn more strategies entrepreneurs quietly use to build lasting wealth, make sure you subscribe, because the next video breaks down the exact asset systems many successful founders use to grow their money while they sleep.